Good afternoon, Larimer County, and welcome to our work session. Today is Wednesday, February 28th, 2024. And today our topic is to interact with our folks from Community Corrections. Our director is here to get an update on an very interesting topic, first responder trauma counselors update, and certainly some revisiting of evaluations regarding community corrections, as I understand it. So let me introduce myself. John Kafalis, Commissioner from District 1, also the Chair. I'm currently joined by Commissioner Shattuck McNally from District 3, and we will be waiting for Commissioner Stevens from District 2. We also have our County Manager, Lorinda Volker. And before we turn it over to Director Humphrey, Emily, is there anything you'd like to say?
If I could get the microphone on. I appreciate that Emily and team are here today to talk about the first responder trauma counselors. This is a program that you all supported with ARPA funds and has been very beneficial for the department and for staff. And so, Emily, I'm going to hand it off to you to go through your slides and tell us more about how this organization has benefited staff.
Thank you, Lorinda. Welcome, colleagues.
Thank you. And good afternoon. My name is Emily Humphrey, and I'm the Director of Community Justice Alternatives. In just a few moments, I'll introduce the panel that's going to be speaking to you today. But we're going to be talking about two different topics today. The first topic is first responder trauma counselors. As you're aware, when the pandemic started, it took a very large hit on our whole world and our whole community. But as essential workers, our staff at Community Justice Alternatives came in every single day. And it was a very trying time, along with what we do here. What we do is complex and it's difficult and it's important, but it takes a toll on our staff. And oftentimes, individuals don't really understand what it's like to be on the front line when it comes to criminal justice and first responders. So back in the day, around COVID time, you were generous enough to recognize the need for certain types of support for our staff, and that was first responder trauma counselors. Every year we come back and talk about how we utilize the program each year so you can see the benefits that our staff have from utilizing that program. I'm really excited because today we have Mario Munoz, who is to my left, who is going to be also talking about the evaluations unit with Community Corrections, but he's also a member of our peer support team that's directly in correlation to first responder trauma counselors.
And before we continue, respectfully, I just want to acknowledge that Commissioner Stevens has joined us, so all three of us are here.
Perfect. So we're going to talk about year 2023 and how Community Justice Alternatives utilized first responder trauma counselors. If you're interested, I have an annual report that they provide to me every year that's in my hand that I can pass along to you that talks about all of the services they provide and specific to what we utilized here at CJA. But I actually want to turn it over to Mario first to talk a little bit about what it means to have first responder trauma counselors and why he's a peer support for first responders. So go ahead, Mario.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mario Munoz. I am part of Larimer County Community Corrections, as well as part of this here peer support team. I have completed the National Peer Support Academy, which was a 40-hour course. And I have taken part in therapeutic gatherings, debriefings, and one-on-one reach-outs with individuals recommended for assistance. The idea behind uniting all first responders into one tribe is prominent in our teachings. The understanding that every day our first responders in every capacity experience primary and secondary trauma is a fact, and unfortunately is not something that's commonly addressed in the media. A civilian may deal with a handful of traumatic events in their lifetime, whereas a first responder deals with a handful of traumatic events every day on their shift. Just briefly to quote Joanne Rupert, who is the CEO of first responders, a problem shared is a problem halved. We are individuals of service inherently, and FRTC gives us the opportunity to service the individuals who service others. And then so in regard to this slide here, we have 8 CGA peer team members. The peer team continue to receive training to better support staff needs. That includes that 40-hour course I had mentioned to you. And CGA has 4 official debriefings. We actually had a debriefing last year that I was able to attend in regard to an overdose that occurred in our facility. And that was very beneficial to the individuals involved. We were able to go through safety procedures as well as how are you doing, just simple questions such as that. 2024, just briefly going to mention the Peer Connect. So Peer Connect this is a new app that can be downloaded on your smartphone. It went through a trial period last year, but it officially launched late last year. And so what this basically is, it's an app you can download on your phone, but it makes one-on-one reach outs, events, and third-party assistance easily accessible throughout our agency.
And what I would say about this Peer Connect app, it's really unique. So every staff member is part of this database. And if there is a traumatic situation and I feel that I want to reach out to Mario to see how he's doing, I can suggest that in the app anonymously, and it will go to a different peer support to say, will you reach out to Mario and see how he's doing? And we can collect that data that's been happening. When we talk about our 4 official debriefings, that is when we bring staff together with our peer support and sometimes with the clinical director from first responder trauma counselors to really kind of debrief a very critical stage that we've had happen, whether that's an overdose or maybe a death of a client. And we had 4 this year, which is unfortunate, but very beneficial that we've had that opportunity to come together and talk with one another that it's okay not to be okay. Also, our peer support. Our peer support is for all 250 staff that we have, but we also support other agencies across northern Colorado. So if there's, for example, a firefighter in Firestone that doesn't want to reach out to his peer support, they can reach out to Mario and have a connection there so they feel that they can confide in someone, but maybe not someone that they're working with if they feel that that could jeopardize their job. So I want to talk a little bit about the stats we had this year because it is so amazing how much staff has embraced first responder trauma counselors. In 2023, we had 668 contacts to first responder trauma counselors. We had 1 to 2 clinical contacts for an individual working for us 195 times. We had 3 or more clinical contacts 83 times in 2023. Now, I'm not saying that they could have gone and utilized another therapist or EAP, but I would think that that's probably not the case if we did not have first responder trauma counselors out there. So it's really important that we continue to utilize their services, and it's so impactful. What I would also say is our ARMOR, which is our All Response Mobile Operation Response, that's when an individual's in crisis. They can contact first responder trauma counselors 24/7. And if that person is in need, they'll go see them at 3 o'clock in the morning. They'll go to them where they're at. Maybe that's their house, maybe that's another place. And fortunately and unfortunately, we had 3 of those this year. So that means we had an individual or individuals that were in crisis and we had the ability to go see them and meet them where they're at. So I'd bring that to your attention because it is just so important that we have this program, and we're so blessed that we do. Do you want to make any comment about that, Mario, any of those things?
So the only thing I'll add with the ARMOR service there is, this is individuals who are dealing with potentials. This is suicide prevention. This is substance use, relapse, or initial use. These are individuals, to Emily's point, in severe crisis.
Go right ahead.
One moment, Commissioner Stevens.
Yeah, so so for the ARMOR response, are those located like within the community so they can get to there pretty quickly, or they're how long would someone have to maybe wait for?
I don't believe it's very long at all, and I think Mario can probably speak to that more, but they have like 28 clinicians. They have folks that are on call.
Oh.
So I think it's very quickly, especially they have 2 trucks right there. You can see the mobile unit that goes and finds that individual. Do you want to add to that?
Yeah, absolutely. So the way we were trained and the idea, philosophy behind this is, you can call 911 and that's for civilians. This is 911 for us, for individuals of service. Yeah.
And so so the 2 vehicles that you're showing, those are located like in this region.
It is.
Oh, yes,
So,
ma'am.
okay, so they can get there pretty darn quickly.
Yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
thank you.
Commissioner, yes.
So, and this is really great to hear about. I'm just trying to understand the ARMOR, the All Responder Mobile Operation Response. This is a separate organization that you guys contract with to respond, but they respond to probably are they working for others at the same time, or this is just for the county?
So no, this is first responder trauma counselors who has probably 28, 30 different agencies that they work with. So it's for northern Colorado. So it's the clinicians that oversee our peer support. They're the clinicians that handle all of this. So it could be, let's say there may be a tragedy in, let's say, I don't even know if Firestone Police Department's part of it, but let's say Firestone Police Department. They could go out to do an armor response to them, but they could also go to us here in Larimer County, so.
And if I might, a second question, so if there was a critical incident, like just recently, we've lost, had some pretty horrific accidents, and, that's always hard to see. Would that be something that automatically send out folks? Not you, but would they respond to others, or is it just as requested by what you, or other agencies are using?
It would depend on that agency, so, and it would be for the officer, or for the paramedic, or for the EMT. So if there was a tragic car accident that really impacted the paramedic, if the paramedic was part of a first responder trauma counselors, they would be able to reach out to that individual. So it's all the entities that utilizes the services of first responder trauma counselors. What I will tell you is since we began the inception of this, the coroner's office also uses first responder trauma counselors, and now the district attorney's office does as well. So it's very important for Larimer County in general, but there's a lot of different areas, and they would need to seek it out as well.
Great, that's very helpful, thank you.
You bet.
Before we move on, just to follow up from Commissioner Shattuck McNally's questions, for just a little bit more clarification. So the first responder trauma counselors, who employs them and who owns these vans?
First responder trauma counselors.
First, say that again?
First responder trauma counselors, this is all part of their programming. It includes armor.
So they're a separate entity and we contract with them?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
You bet.
Yeah, Commissioner?
Are we going to talk about the cute dogs?
Oh, those are the therapy dogs, and they're fabulous. And we have had at least one debriefing where they brought the dogs in, and I at least fell in love, I can tell you that. Are they real? They're real, and they all live with the director of first responder trauma counselors. They're all her dogs.
Okay. Please continue.
You bet. So if you look at this next slide, this is just kind of showing you the utilization of first responder trauma counselors between 2022 and 2023. And as you can see, it kind of ebbs and flows given the circumstances. So when we talk about the 4 debriefings, you can kind of see where they spiked, which is between April and July. That's when we had some tragic situations happen in our facility and with the clients that we serve. And so that's when the debriefings took place. So you can see it ebbs and flows, but it's very consistent that the use that we have of this program. Just to kind of show you the cost savings, we pay each month about $2,800 a month, and we pay about $28,800 a year. If we had to do normal contractual services to do those one-on-ones, it would be well over $114,000. So we're saving the taxpayers' money and Larimer County money by utilizing this program, and it's much more cost-effective and much more pointed to what we need for our self-care using this program. And then that's all I have for first responder trauma counselors. If anyone has any further questions, let me know.
Colleagues, do you have any further questions or comments regarding the first responder trauma counselors update? Oh, yes.
First, Mario and team and everyone, thank you for the work. I think this is really important. Having first responders in my family for over 30 years, I know how important it is to just have that safe place. And I think this is phenomenal. And I really appreciate kind of just explaining and clarifying what this looks like. And I'm glad that other departments and the district's attorney and all of them are using it. And this is great that you showed, the savings. And it sounds like a really great utilization of a needed service, and so I'm glad to learn more about it, and just want to compliment you all on your dedication to taking care of our of our team and making sure that they have, because this is hard work and we need to take care of each other. I just want to say thank you, and you have my gratitude.
Thank you. And we want to say thank you to all of you because you saw the importance of it when we came and asked for this, because this is something that we did not have in place, and it was such a critical component that we were lacking. So I will leave behind the annual report. You can see all the services that they provide, because it's not just counseling. There's EMDR, there's hypnosis, there's horseback riding, equine therapy. He knows about a lot more than I do. But there's so many different things that are available to our staff that just keep us healthy.
So other than collectively expressing our gratitude, I do have a question.
Sure.
And besides the benefit cost financial analysis, how else are we evaluating the efficacy of this program?
I think that peer support gets together and has discussions about how the well-being of our staff is and seeing, and I think part of it can be looking at turnover as well, because we'll know who's in the briefing. We continue to support them. Mario and the other peer supports continue to reach out to make sure that individuals are feeling safe and they're feeling that they've been heard and they're supported. So I think that's how we can kind of look at it, is how many peer support reach outs we have. And again, I think how many people are reaching out to our therapists and our clinical team, I think shows the efficacy is where it needs to be. I don't know if you have any comments.
Sure. The only thing I'll add is that the big topic that we discuss during our meetings in peer support would be burnout. And specifically with this profession, career, that's very prominent. And that is a primary focus, is making sure we can handle the workload, but also the emotional load that comes with our profession.
Yes, Commissioner. Thank you, Mario.
Appreciate you making that comment. That made me think of burnout, turnover, and if we can keep, our very valuable employees and keep them, I'm assuming the training for a new employee would be quite a bit. And so if we're saving that also is a cost savings added to this. And I don't know how much that costs, but was just thinking if we can take care of our own and keep the burnout and that retention, that in the long run saves the county money as well, right?
Absolutely. And we have a robust training for our new employees that come in, and part of that is the education of first responder trauma counselors that it's okay to reach out as much as you need to, because this is unlimited. So no one's turned away because they've hit 5 sessions. They get to continue and utilize the services. So that's been very beneficial.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Emily, I
Yes.
have one question. Are you seeing any comments about this in your employee survey? I know we've only been doing it 2 years, so I'm not sure there's been enough time for everyone to really recognize the value, but
Absolutely. So there has been a number of comments in our employee survey that they talk about first responders and how we're supporting staff and their well-being and their self-care. Absolutely. Thank you for that. Yeah.
Thank you, Lorinda. Thank you, colleagues. I believe we can move on now.
Perfect. So now why we're really here, I mean, not that we weren't here before, but the real presentation is to really highlight the great work we do at Community Corrections in our evaluations unit. So I get the pleasure of introducing the panel, and then I'm going to step back and let the experts take over. But you're going to hear from Alex Danielson, who is the supervisor over our evaluations unit. I always put how long they've been with the county because we have a lot of longevity within our programs, which is really important because we have solid staff that are committed to making a difference. So Alex has been with us for 12 years, and we're really excited for her to present. We have Cully Flynn, who's 2 doors down from me on my left, and he's been with the county for 18 years. Mario next to me has been our evaluator, and he's been with us for 3 years, so we're really excited to have him on board. And we have our victim witness unit, which is Darcy Nelson is one of 2, and she's here on my right, and she's been here for 3 years. So I'm going to turn it over to them so they can kind of tell you the great things that we're doing over here.
Hello, thank you guys for having us again today. We're really excited to talk to you about the evaluations unit. My name is Alex Danielson. I supervise the unit here. So our evaluations team is made up of Alexis Ongley, who is behind me. She is the assistant director over evaluations and victim services. And then we talked about me being the supervisor. We have 3 evaluators who screen the cases through. And then we have 2 an admin coordinator and an administrative specialist Teresa helps with our day-to-day scheduling, appointments, doing some paperwork behind the scenes, and then Nora works with our advisory board, coordinating meetings and things that you guys have probably been involved in. When I totaled up the years of experience, in total, our evaluation unit has 73 years of combined experience, so that's pretty amazing. Then in our victim services unit, we have Jean Wallace, who is in charge of all of the victim notifications at the Alternative Sentencing Department. And then to my left is Darcy Nelson, and she provides notifications at Community Corrections. Jean has a very lengthy background in victim services, so she came to us and has tons of knowledge in this world. And then Darcy, before this, was actually a probation officer working with the sex offender unit in Mesa County. So to start off, community corrections, we're designed to enhance supervision for our clients. Our overall goal is public safety. We pride ourselves on helping our clients build stability because we know they're going to transition back into our community. So, simple as that. During this presentation, we are going to, because our units are so combined with each other, we're going to bounce back and forth between evaluations and victim services to create a story of how we work together because we are so involved. So the evaluations unit is the first step in the referral process. This is very unique because our team meets one-on-one with these people who are being considered for placement. We are gathering information before we meet with them, and then we sit down, we hear their story, we gather tons of information that we then review with our advisory board. We're going through information about their cases, their criminal history, their substance use, their mental health, their treatment history, companions, where they've been living. We just want an entire view of what this person has been going through before they got to before they are being considered to come to the halfway house.
And Alex, can I ask you a question? So the slide before you talked about who you're evaluating. Are you evaluating folks coming out of prison, out of jail? How do they start that referral process
Thank
to
you.
begin with? You bet.
So there are two ways that people can come into community corrections, and that is they can be directly sentenced by the court. We are trying to keep these people out of prison. We want to give them all the possible resources to prevent that. And then we also have people who are in prison who are transitioning back to our community. Coley will talk about the different types of referrals, but those are the two main ways somebody can come into our program. We always say when we are interviewing someone, it's really important to talk about accountability, responsibility of crime. We want to address the motivation level because when someone is able to take that accountability and is wanting change in their life, that's what's really going to make them successful in our program. The evaluations unit here is the only evaluations unit in Colorado. Most programs will only get a paper packet and will never meet a person face-to-face and are basing their decision off of that, where we are meeting with these people. We'll even talk about how we are conducting now Zoom interviews with our clients that are in prison. And then in May in 2022, Boulder County reached out to us because they were really interested in forming their own evaluations unit. So we got to be involved in that process, sat in on the interview with them, helped them choose an evaluator. That person then came to our facility and shadowed our unit for, I think it was a day or two. They came to screening and everything. So that was a really great experience for our team and them as well. And we've just continued to work really closely with Boulder County because they are also starting to meet with clients who are in the prison system as well via Zoom.
So how would Boulder have done that previously if they didn't have that position? What would that look like in other communities that don't have?
In Boulder County specifically, they actually have 2 programs in Boulder and then in Longmont. So first, the pre-sentence investigation report that's compiled by probation officers will go to that program. And that program will then decide if they feel they can supervise this person. That case will then go to their advisory board, and we'll run through what the advisory board, their responsibilities are. But it goes to the program first for them to decide. And I want to say their director, a higher level person in management will review the cases and decide, and then it will go back to the board to do the paperwork and the files behind the scenes.
So the way that you all are doing it is much more thorough and much more.
Yes.
Yeah, you have a better kind of picture of what that person's needs are, I assume, and.
Yeah, you get a much different view of somebody when you're sitting with them for an hour-long interview, rather than just seeing things that are on paper. And usually it's not the positive things, it's usually the bad things. So it really, we develop a rapport with these people. We dive into past their childhood, trauma, and strengths even. So it gives us we feel safe pulling someone to our facility, even though they may look scary on paper. We've met with them and feel we can appropriately supervise them.
Thanks for explaining that.
So is Boulder County one of the counties that administers their own community corrections program? Because I understood Mesa County, us, and maybe a third county.
Garfield. Yeah, Garfield, Mesa, and ourselves are the 3 government-run community corrections. But Boulder is looking, they have privates in Boulder, but they're looking to create their own with their new addition to their buildings that they're doing. So we may see them eventually turn into a government-run
So
program.
what is
already.
the intersection of a Boulder County evaluation employee working with a private entity to make decisions about, community corrections?
I'm going to let you answer that.
So Boulder County Community Justice Services is the unit that the referrals will go through. So they do have a office building that they run out of and do the community corrections referrals through, but they let the programs decide.
Great, thank you. Yeah, Commissioner.
As I understand it, talking with the commissioners in Boulder County, they're kind of looking overall at the whole system and how they operate, even kind of with their private entity, and kind of, because I think they have some pretrial concerns and things, correct? And so this is kind of another partnership with them, just trying to help them evaluate kind of their direction in the future. Would that be a correct statement?
Absolutely. And to piggyback onto that, we have an incredible database system called Lois, and they are going to be working with us to purchase our Lois system, so they will mimic a lot of our programming through our computer system.
Well, I want to just thank you for that partnership, and I know that's probably above and beyond your duties, but I think since we're neighbors and probably have some mobility, and it's just great for our region, so I just want to thank you and compliment you and appreciate that you are all doing that, so thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Darcy Nelson. I'm part of the victim service team, along with my partner, Jean. As Alex mentioned, I started out in probation years ago in Mesa County, and I took some time off to have a family and travel, but my last caseload that I was supervising was the sex offenders. And while I was very proud of the rehabilitation services offered to that clientele, a lot of times I had a strong sense of, well, what about the victims? We were putting all of this time and effort into these offenders, but oftentimes I never even heard the end of the victim's stance on that. So when I decided to jump back into the workforce, I knew I wanted to work on the other side and work with victims, so that's how I became a part of this awesome team. But with that said, I just want to give you a brief background on how the Victims' Rights Act, or the VRA, began here in Colorado. In the late 60s and early 70s, the women's movement was seeking equal rights and personal freedom for women. This movement was also the foundational development of crime victims' rights as well. As activism grew in the 70s, there was a shift in the need to provide special care to victims of rape and domestic violence. Numerous advocacy groups were formed, including the presidential task force that Ronald Reagan helped establish after he himself was the victim of an attempted assassination. And then finally, in 1992, Colorado passed our VRA, or Victims' Rights Act, which, as you can see up there, states that all victims have the right to be heard informed, and present at all critical stages. And my role here in community corrections involves one of those critical stages of notifications.
Yes, Commissioner.
Forgive me for interrupting. I'm asking a question, maybe it's wrong timing, but as much as going on with me the last few days, that my brain is kind of multitasking. But I'm curious, since the victims' rights or funding, the victim services funding has been cut by 40% and impacting a lot of nonprofits with some of those grants, I'm curious if that's impacting any of the programming and things that you're all involved with, because we've been advocating for that, and I've heard a lot from like Child Safe and others, and I'm curious how might be impacting you. And sorry to
No,
start
that's-
that, but I think I might lose my question.
And actually, I'm going to answer that because I'm the chair of that board for the state of Colorado that gives out those funds. And so you're correct. We had to cut about 40%, and we have our next board meeting next Friday to talk about that. And it's impacted greatly because at one point we gave away $9 million, and by the end we gave away $100 million. And then we have to cut 40% of $100 million. So a lot of folks have a lot of resources in as victims. And so we had to write proposals about what would it look like if we only supported 40% of what we give you right now. And people are going to have to pivot and move, and services are going to have to kind of go lower.
I know there's some remedies possibly at the state, and I've also been talking with our congressional leaders. And I know don't mean to speak for my colleagues, but I'm assuming my colleagues would be aligned that if we can sign a letter or advocate for you in certain points, or if there's a letter or something we can sign on to kind of voice our concerns, I would be willing to do that, and I just feel like this is something that I've been talking about for about 5 months, and it still seems like it's going forward.
Absolutely.
So I just would like to help out where we can. So
Absolutely. And Kelly Kissel is the office manager for Department of Criminal Justice Victim Services, so I will absolutely pass that along to you. She'd be happy to maybe reach out. So thank you for that.
thank you.
This slide describes a little bit about what my day-to-day responsibilities look like and include. I work directly with the victims of cases that have been ordered, as Alex was mentioning, by the court for referrals to our facility. In addition to that, Jean and I are part of the Prison Rape Elimination Act, which we call PREA team, which includes where we check in with victims who have reported incidents in our facility, along with offer services to other clients that are in our facility that have been victims previously. I'm also there for other staff members. We've also had a couple that have reached out to us for referrals to go to other programs and things like that. And lastly, we collaborate with many other entities in our county, which leads to the next slide. So the top three are the main ones that I collaborate with. So we reach out to the district attorney's office to get victim contact information. I work well with probation. We try to make the transitions between all of these facilities very fluid for our victims, because we understand that it is a lot for them to have to go through and to seek out different information. And then lastly, the courts, just with all the referrals and different things with that, I'm very involved with them as well.
And can I just mention one thing? So it used to be under the VRA statute that victims had to opt in to post-sentencing, which means they had to sign up, and the percentage of victim notifications went down tremendously. It's now mandatory, and so we have an obligation under VRA to make those notifications, and I believe we are the only community corrections that has an internal victim advocate. They normally go through probation, so we are very blessed to actually have a victim advocate that's inside.
Great, thanks, Emily. Here is the list of all the qualifying offenses that determine if a case is included as a Victim Rights Act case. As you can see, they range from our most severe felony assault crimes all the way down to traffic offenses. And then the list was just recently updated, I want to say a year or so ago, to include burglary of a dwelling and arson, which to me seemed surprising that arson was never considered a VRA crime until recently. And then I think they're continued, yep, so there's a lot of them.
Hi there, my name is Cully Flynn. I'm an evaluator with Community Corrections. I've been with our program for 18 years. I'm going to touch on the 6 main referral types that we screen with the evaluations unit. The very first one is the diversions or direct sentence clients. These are sentenced directly to Community Corrections by the district court as a diversion from the Department of Corrections. These clients typically make up the most majority of our cases that we screen. We spend the most time with these clients. These are cases that may not warrant a Department of Corrections prison sentence, but maybe require a higher level of supervision than probation may have to offer. These also may be clients that have previously been sentenced to probation, but are now being revoked from probation due to program noncompliance or maybe new offenses. The next referral type that we screen are transition or Department of Corrections referrals. These are clients on inmate status that are transitioning from prison to community via residential facility before release on parole. These have in the past typically been reviewed by paper referrals that we have been receiving from DOC, but we are now kind of shifting over to Zoom interviews, which has been pretty beneficial because, like Alex mentioned, sometimes what we read on paper can be a lot worse than what we get to meet with, the person that we get to meet with. The next referral type is parole or conditional parole. These are parole residents placed in the residential facility due to less serious violations of parole, or maybe they're clients that are experiencing homelessness while they're on parole. These clients may need assistance due to struggling with various stability factors. They might be struggling with substance use, be experiencing homelessness, unemployment. They're referred to us in hopes of that under our supervision that they may have a chance to stabilize rather than be put back into a custody setting. The next type is sex offender intensive supervised probation. These are sex offenders that are sentenced to the residential placement as a condition of their intensive probation requirements. These clients typically must complete a stipulated amount of time in community corrections as they're required programming in the required programming as residents before being permitted to release the community for the remainder of their sentence. Then we also have probation clients that are residents referred to us by probation officers for residential placement due to probation violations or to stabilize the clients. Like parole, these clients may need assistance due to struggling with the protective factors as well. So we hope to pull them in and get them stabilized to help divert them away from possibly being put back into custody. And then lastly, federal pretrial. These residents are supervised by federal probation or federal pretrial who are placed in the residential facility for enhanced supervision and stability while awaiting their next court hearing.
Okay, hello again. My name is Mario Munoz with the evaluations team. And this here is our evaluations timeline for our diversion referrals. And so I'm going to briefly go over these. We're actually going to be going more in depth in these as we continue on. And then Darcy as well will kind of be speaking to the VRA portion of these phases here. So the first portion here is disposition hearing in court. This is simply the part of the timeline the client has pled guilty to their charges, and the courts are now moving forward with their rehabilitation options. The next step is going to be our community corrections evaluation ordered. So at this point, it is determined by the courts that a community corrections placement may be an option for rehabilitation, pending approval by our selections committee and advisory board. Orders entered and assigned to evaluations team. An email is sent to our division, and potential diversion clients are assigned to each evaluator through a rotation cycle.
Darcy with Victim Services. So once our evaluation team determines if a case is a Victim Rights Act case, we'll send out an email to the district attorney's victim advocates to seek that contact information of those victims. And then I make all reasonable efforts to get in contact with that victim to obtain either a written or oral statement to be included into our evaluation process. That statement is then read in our screenings along with all the additional information of the offender. And then I coordinate with the victim if they would like to speak at our advisory board. So I make arrangements and times and get them the Zoom link and get them all set up with instructions for that. I will then notify them the outcome of the advisory board screening if they're accepted or rejected. And then I will continue notifications if that offender does get sentenced to our facility. And I'll touch on that a little bit later about what significant critical events I notify victims about.
Okay. The next phase is going to be case preparation. So once assigned a client, our evaluators begin preparing for our interview. This preparation includes acquiring static information. So we're talking prior criminal history, custody concerns, police report summaries, etc. Lastly, in this portion, interviews are scheduled with the client or Larimer County jail staff, depending on where the client is in the community. The next portion is going to be our interview conducted. So interviews are completed either in person, in our office or in the Larimer County Jail or via Zoom and phone. These different interview formats are dependent on the client's custody status, in custody or on bond. Making interviews as accessible as possible is a priority for our team, understanding that at this point in the timeline, a client is more than likely in a busy and stressful state, right? They got a sentencing coming up. They're talking with their counsel and so forth. The next portion is going to be screenings. So after an evaluation interview is conducted, our evaluators take the time to organize and proofread our selections reports before presenting them during our weekly selections meeting. Currently, those are on Thursdays. Clients are scheduled to be presented based off of their sentencing dates. If a client meets a specific criteria warranting our advisory board to review their case, they're then presented the following week during our weekly advisory board meeting. And again, we'll be going more in depth on the screening process. I did want to note, however, that our advisory board is comprised of prominent members in our community, and they do review each client's strengths and potential security concerns for the facility, staff, and community. The next portion here is going to be our sentencing. So after a client's placement verdict is obtained, whether that be an accept or reject, a letter to the court is created and sent to our judicial district prior to sentencing. We give them 72 hours ahead of the sentencing there. Once a sentence is ruled, our evaluator updates our system and moves forward with the associated standard operating procedures. And then lastly, we have file preparation and handoff. So if sentenced to community corrections, our evaluators prepare a case management file and schedule a bed date for the client to enter our program. In this part of the timeline, communication commences with our treatment staff. If the client is in need of specific programming, be that substance addiction or mental health concerns. If not sentenced to community corrections, the client is closed out of our system and their file is archived. So this portion here is going to be the timeline for our transition client. So this is going to be clients coming DOC referrals. And there's a lot of similarities here assigned to evaluations team, similar to diversion clients. Screenings are similar as well as the preparation handoff. Case is community eligible. So DOC calculates a client's sentence to determine if a client is community eligible. The factors that come into play with this include risk management scoring, how long have they been incarcerated prior to the referral coming on to our desk here, and other various factors. And then another case preparation and Zoom interviews. So a distinguishing trait for transition referrals would be that, historically we would screen these clients based off of informational packets supplied by DOC case managers and a third-party system we utilize with DOC. However, recently we have been fortunate enough to begin Zoom meetings and interviews with the clients in DOC. This has allowed us to add that personal touch and be able to conduct an interview like we do with our diversion clients.
Darcy with Victim Services again. For my portion in this timeline, it's very similar to our diversion clients and referrals. The only difference is if it's noted in the Department of Corrections packet that a victim would like to speak, I will wait till after selections, and then I'll contact them and make arrangements if they would like to speak at the advisory board. Then it's the same process. When they enter, I will continue notifications to that victim.
Okay. So this next portion here is going to be case preparation process. So we went ahead and listed the general kind of basic information that we gather. That's going to be that static information. So conduct in custody, police reports. We get the raw police reports, and then we summarize them to the best of our ability, usually 2 paragraphs, but we're looking at 20 pages of police reports. It's a big part of it there. We look at district attorney files, so what is their plea agreement? What are they looking at? What's at stake here for this individual? So gathering context regarding a client's past behavior is important, as it helps formulate questions to ask during the interview, addressing any potential concerns, as well as gauge any deviation between their past and current mindset. So this is what they had done, but as they sit before us, who are they? What are their aspirations? What are their goals? Properly prepping prior to the interview also assists in keeping the interview about the client as they are presently. So the importance of case preparation cannot be understated, as the quality of our interviews is dependent on the context revealed through this prep work. Questions specific to past conduct assist in determining a client's progress and or regress in their rehabilitation.
This is Alex again. So For the interview, when our evaluators sit down with a client that they are screening, we conduct what's called a level of supervision inventory, or the LSI interview. This is how we measure criminogenic risks, which is the likelihood of recidivism, and we identify their criminogenic needs, which are their needs that are linked specifically to criminal behavior. And in this slide, you can see on the bottom right are the eight criminogenic needs for community corrections clients that we are measuring. Within this level of supervision inventory interview, the model that we go off of is called the risk need responsivity model. So the risks and needs should be determining the strategies appropriate for addressing our clients' criminogenic risk factors. The risk, like I said before, identifies the likelihood of recidivism. And we always like to note, especially in our assessment training, that risk doesn't necessarily mean someone's dangerous. It just means that they have more things that need to be identified during their program to reduce their likelihood to commit new crimes. And so we definitely point that out just because we do see a higher total LSI score. It doesn't mean that that person is dangerous. Then we go to, or within the risk portion of this model, the goal is to reduce the risks, and the treatment, or how we do that is we match this client to the appropriate treatment level to address these risks. The needs portion of this, clients have a variety of needs, some of which are directly linked to criminal behavior. These criminogenic needs can be changed. So there's certain factors that can't be changed, like someone's prior criminal history, if they've ever been fired in the past, but these needs are things that we can address while in the program: substance use, mental health, stable housing, and that's what we really want to hit on when these clients enter our program. The responsivity side of things, that is saying that we need to match our clients with their specific individual characteristics. So say someone has an education level of 6th grade, we really don't want to put them in a high level of treatment that's not going to be beneficial for them, where they're in 40 hours a week of treatment in a classroom setting. We really, do you have a question? Sorry. Okay.
Go ahead.
And so other responsivity factors that we take into account are going to be gender, age, ethnicity, their learning style, cognitive abilities, mental health, culture, and also strengths. So if sentenced to our program, these risks and needs are then incorporated into a case plan, and that's addressed through treatment matching and skill building when they get into our program.
Commissioner Shattuck McNally.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm sorry to interrupt you. I'm just curious, and maybe you are doing this, has ever the ACEs score, the Adverse Childhood Experiences scores, been looked at or attached or part of this interview? And is there any evaluation of links between Adverse Childhood Experiences scores and kind of what this is looking at? Or do you do some interviewing on kind of those experiences? Just curious about that.
So in our decision-making tool, when we go through the transition process, there is a link from, as you probably are aware, childhood trauma for people who then go and commit more violent crimes. So during our interviews, we are definitely diving into that past trauma and letting them know that there are services we can connect to. We don't specifically score that ACEs assessment out, but we do utilize it, and if it has been conducted, we will look at that.
And the reason I'm curious is ongoing as we try to talk about activities that we need to invest in as a community for more upstream resources to help with children who are having these. I mean, I'm just curious if we're kind of collecting that data and looking at that, that would be great for us to have for advocating for, trying to get way upstream for some of these folks, especially our youth that are starting to get involved. And I'm glad to hear that you're identifying that and tracking that, and that's great to hear. I thought it was, but I just thought it'd be great to ask and to find out, because I do know about that link, and I'm just thinking the more we have to show that and help unpack that and help be proactive about it. I know you all are, but it just, also for the public to understand, there's a lot of things we could do to maybe help folks before they get to this point, so thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And when we see these crimes on paper, we know, having done this job, that there has to be a reason behind it. And so that's what we're trying to get to the root of, and it typically is how they were brought up.
Thank you.
Okay, this is Cully Flynn again, Evaluations Unit. I'm going to go over the typical information that we gather, kind of go a little more in depth without going into too much details. We're not here all day, I guess, right? Typically, we prefer in-person interviews. As evaluators, we are afforded a better understanding of our clients by meeting with them face-to-face. We have found that during the interview process, we gain a deeper level of rapport with the client, which can yield more effective communication and detailed information. Some of the information that we go over is current offenses. We ask the client about the details of the offense. What is their level of accountability? Are they remorseful? What are the circumstances of the offense from their perspective? Criminal history, we may ask about concerning previous offenses, look at the timelines in their history. Education and employment, as mentioned before, what is their level of education? Employment, are they gainfully employed? Have they struggled with maintaining work? How do they interact with their bosses and coworkers? Financially, are they utilizing any kind of social assistance? Are their financial needs being met? Family, marital, community ties, and support systems. What was their upbringing like? Do they have familial support in the community? Have they experienced past childhood trauma? What is their relationship status, and is it nurturing and supportive? Accommodation, housing, and stability. Do they have a stable residence? Is it in a high crime area? Are they happy with where they live? Leisure, recreation activities. Do they make time to do pro-social activities, or are they wrapped up in antisocial or addictive behaviors? Companions, support systems. Are they hanging out with people who use or have criminal tendencies? Do they have pro-social friends? Alcohol, drug use, when did it start? Has their use increased or decreased? Have they had treatment? Emotional, personal trauma history, mental health. Do they have any, mental health or physical health problems that need to be addressed throughout their programming? Attitude, orientation, goals, motivation. What is their level of accountability? General thoughts on being law-abiding? What drives them? What's important to them? What's their motivation? Response to supervision, history, escape, abscons, history of under supervision. Do they push back against authority? What is their level of engagement under supervision? Custody issues, do they have an assaultive history in custody? Do they follow rules, or are they considered management issues in custody? And then gang affiliation, are they affiliated with any security threat groups? Is their affiliation something that needs to be monitored more closely in the facility or in the community? All of this information is gathered in order to gain a better understanding of the client's risks and needs in the time that we meet with them.
I'm going to bounce to our decision-making tool. So when we review clients from the Department of Corrections, these are going to be cases that did warrant a prison sentence. So very serious in nature. They could be assaultive. Someone could have struggled many times on probation, couldn't get through our program. So they're definitely going to be more serious in nature when we see them. So because of House Bill 181251, community corrections were required to build a research-based decision-making tool. And this helps guide decision-making because it is very difficult to see something on paper and not immediately have a bias against something. So this will help mitigate those biases. It creates consistency within the voting members of the board, and then transparency in our decision-making. So all boards are and programs are consistent with their decisions. As part of this tool, the first thing we need is the Colorado Actuarial Risk Assessment Scale, or the CARIS score we call that. And that is a risk assessment scale. They use 9 variables that the Department of Corrections has indicated are the best predictors of recidivism. So all of this is compiled into the referral that we receive, and it gives us a risk level that we then incorporate into our tool. We have 2 different components of our tool, the risk and readiness, and then the needs consideration. So if you go through and read these, The risks that we are looking at are offender has exhibited problematic behaviors in previous community corrections or placements in jail. We want to know how they've behaved in prior correctional facilities and if they're safe to bring in our program. Offender exhibits concerning violent conduct. Do they have any write-ups in custody? Do they have a prior history of assaultive crimes that has continued? We definitely want to keep track of that. Maybe a victim is very opposed to this person coming out and has stated that, and we have record of that. Lack of motivation and lack of appropriate ties to our community is something we take into consideration too. So community corrections does, because we are an enhanced program, we do take clients that are higher risk. And our tool helps us sort out if the level of risk of the person coming through, is this something that we can appropriately manage with our skills, with our treatment programs? And this tool helps decide that. Whereas the need considerations, so if you go through those, they lack a realistic housing plan, lack an established vocational or educational history, experience childhood trauma, has mental health or drug needs. These are all things that can be addressed in our halfway house and can be hopefully provided the stability to then transition out into the community. Because getting someone a job will help with reentry. Stable housing for people will increase their success when they transition out. Drug treatment, mental health services, this all helps to reduce recidivism. So we are working to increase these needs when they're in our program.
Question that I have, thank you, Alex. Going back to the previous slide, risk and readiness. I know this has come up with the pretrial assessment tool and how we've revised it, but the bottom variable or consideration, offender lacks appropriate ties to the local community, does that put people who are homeless or unhoused at a disadvantage, or how do we adjust for that?
The tool specifically, I mean, in general, we want to take people who don't have a stable home and bring them into community corrections and provide resources. As far as the tool goes, we want to know if they have a stable place that they are going to be released to. Do they have support in the community? They don't have to have everything planned out when they're in prison. That's part of what we can help with as well. But we just want to know if they do have support here, because while we will bring people in who don't have specific ties to Larimer County, because we have so many services that we can help people with, we really want to see people come back into our community where they have ties to then build those support systems back up.
Thank you. I think I'm hearing, I mean, if someone doesn't have appropriate ties because they're either not from this community, but they are unhoused, then that's a check, it's a false, that's a negative. But I think I'm hearing that if on the need considerations, if the person is expressing a willingness to try to make those ties, then that helps them to not get a check mark against them.
And the lack of ties is something that is pretty big amongst community corrections boards, people only wanting to help out their community. And while understandable, we have people that specifically request to come to our community corrections because they want to get out of their the places that they got in trouble at, where they have triggers. And so they specifically ask for us because we do have enhanced services, our treatment programs, our dual diagnosis program for mental health. So we balance that out because we want to set this person up for success.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, Commissioner.
And maybe this is something I should already kind of understand. So if they come from outside of Larimer County and they come into our program, is the other county helping pay? Who pays for, since we have a lot, because I know it sounds like with our success rate, I know a lot of people are asking to come, and so I'm just curious, how does that work?
Hi, Alexis Ongley, Community Corrections. Good to see all of you. So with this particular, so I do want to point out that with this decision-making tool, the requirement for creating it was that we combine professional judgment with actuarial risk. So we used research, and also we identified from our board, from our advisory board, what was really important about the folks that we bring into our program, and then created a tool that supported both of those things. So one of the things that was really important to our board is that the people we're bringing into our program have ties to Larimer County. Now, like Alex was saying, that doesn't mean that everybody does, but the vast majority do. In terms of payment or billing, so the way the billing is structured in the state of Colorado, if they're a diversion client, then each judicial district has a pot of money. And if someone is placed in our judicial district from another, then yes, they do pay out of their pot of money, and vice versa. So that's how that works. Now, if they're a DOC client, that's considered a state client. It comes out of a different pot of money, and it's just for the state. It's not so much determined by the judicial district. Their ties are tied more to where they plan to parole than where their crime was committed.
That's really helpful. Thank you very much.
Okay, so after we score these risks and needs out, it will provide us an outcome. So if someone is coming through who has a high CARAS score, so a high rate to reoffend, they're coming through with violent offenses, their conduct in custody has not been appropriate, and they hit some of the needs categories, that's going to put them in an extremely high risk that we can't supervise. They're not safe to supervise in our program. And our tool will range from outcomes of recommend accept to recommend do not accept. We have discretionary accept, discretionary do not accept risk concerns, and then discretionary do not accept over programming. Because while someone may be extremely dangerous and not safe for community corrections, they also can have so much stability already in place that community corrections isn't appropriate for them, and they might be able to just transition from the Department of Corrections out to parole and skip over the community corrections because they have those stability factors in place. So this gives us a guideline on how to vote. It doesn't mean we have to vote that way. We do document why we go against our tool. And for example, in some of those, you can see that recommend do not accept unless within 12 months of release. If someone is set to be released from prison and we are getting a recommend do not accept, we are going to resume, like we want the responsibility of that client before they come out into our community. Like that is, public safety is our number one goal, and we are the experts, we have resources, so we want to take that on because we know that that is going to be safe for our community to help transition through our program.
Yes.
So I have a question. So when we deem someone that might be just too risky, are there higher levels of, I mean, are there other places for those folks to go?
So in the process of these transition referrals, we receive referrals when they become community eligible. So there's a system in the Department of Corrections, it's called the Time Comp Office. They factor in a bunch of dates and they determine when a case is eligible. So when someone is eligible for community corrections, they then are put into a primary referral where they're going to parole to, where they have ties to or where their crime is out of, and they also have an alternate location that they can choose from. So the referral is first put into their primary location. If we say no as the primary, it then goes to another county to look over that referral. If that other county says no, that referral is then closed out and has to be resubmitted again. In 6 months, it gets resubmitted again. But so if they are determined not to be safe in both counties, then it ends there until the next time they're eligible.
Which means they would stay in the Department of Corrections custody for a longer period of time.
But what we were saying about somebody who's within 12 months of release, I mean, these people are coming back into our community. I mean, I think that's really important for the public to understand too, is that it is better for people to come into this program where they can get the resources that they need than just going back out into the community without having behavioral health help, without having substance use disorder help, without, anger management or any of the type of classes that you teach or programs that they can receive in your thing. So, I mean, this is making our community safer. So for people who have concerns, it's like, we want people to go through these programs because they are more likely to be successful in the community, less recidivism, safer communities, cheaper program than keeping them in prison or jail. So like there's so many benefits from this program, and I think that people don't necessarily understand, just how great these programs are, the work that you do to help people get successfully back into our community, because they are coming back in many cases regardless. And so do you want them to come back in a healthier space, or do you want them to just come back without those tools? Well, we all at this table, and I think a lot of our community members too, want them to come back with those resources.
And I would say part of our community corrections is we do take risks on individuals who are higher risk for that very reason that you've stated, because it's important for our community to be safe and to give them the resources rather than paroling out without a home or to a hotel room. And so if you look at our community corrections, we take a lot higher risk individuals than other community corrections, so.
This is Kelly Flynn again, Evaluations Unit. I'm going to give you a kind of a snapshot of what the screening process looks like at the Selections Committee meeting and as well as the Advisory Board. Once a week, typically Thursdays, the Selection Committee meets for the purpose of presenting and screening the cases and clients that the Evaluations Unit has met with and completed for the week. The Selection Committee is comprised of the Evaluations team as well as staff members from other departments of Community Corrections, like case managers, security staff, and treatment staff. Having other department representatives involved is beneficial as it lends their perspective in cases and clients. During this time, we come together as a team for open and in-depth discussions about cases that we are presenting. Some of the discussion items include community safety, facility staff, client safety, conduct in custody, motivation, remorse, accountability, ties to Larimer County, high-profile cases, details of their plea agreements. It is also during this time, victim input is presented that Darcy has gathered for us. Often we see repeat clients or clients that have been in Larimer County Community Corrections before. After 18 years, I've seen a lot of repeat clients, and I know a lot of them in the community here. At this time, we discuss our thoughts on reaccepting them. We ask what has changed since their last placement at Community Corrections. Were they successful? Or were they a management issue? What can we offer them if they're placed at Community Corrections again? After the evaluator has concluded presenting the client and their case, and the Selection Committee members vote to accept or reject the client, it's important to note that members do not always agree, which is why having an open discussion and dialogue in these selection meetings is so important. Also, part of the screening process is the Advisory Board. Cases that are screened with the Selection Committee will sometimes require an additional screening with our Advisory Board due to meeting certain criteria resulting from higher level severity cases, or also on the condition of previous criminal history or placement criteria. Or, as touched on before, our board is made up of various representatives from other agencies as well as members in the community. The Advisory Board typically meets and screens cases once a week, which is about every Monday. Just as in Selection Committee process, the cases are presented to the Advisory Board along with any victim input, be it provided by written statement or in-person presentation by the victim or victims in the cases. After that has concluded, an open discussion is had, and the board members then vote on whether to accept or reject the clients. Now, I kind of touched on the Advisory Board criteria. These criteria are any felony offenses where deadly weapons was used or possessed, any felony sexual offense, any felony arson, any felony or misdemeanor escape or unauthorized absence, any drug felony 1 or drug felony 2 that involves the sale, cultivation, dispensing, or manufacturing of any controlled substance, any criminal act or acts resulting in death or serious bodily injury of a person, any felony offense that involves kidnapping, strangulation, or stalking, a client who has previously received a felony arrest while under the supervision of Larimer County Community Corrections, any out-of-county referral, any any client convicted of a crime involving special notoriety or community resistance, anything that was basically in the news or high profile. And lastly, any DOC sentence, excuse me, any DOC client who is serving a sentence of a class 1, 2, or 3 felony with a sentence of over 15 years.
Emily? I just want to do a time check, and I'd like us all to be, including us, maybe especially us, mindful that it is important that we finish on time or sooner.
Absolutely. We'll be going fast, and we may skip some slides.
No, I think it's more on our end, so. Thank you.
So within our advisory board, you can see that we have various board members on our board. We have county commissioners, we have mental health professionals, our chief judge sits on our board, public defender, district attorney, Larimer County Sheriff, chief of police for Fort Collins. Within this board, we also have a subcommittee. So this subcommittee is a rotation that votes on cases every week. They have a 4-month voting period, and it's actually staggered, so we can get different group members in at different times. So the makeup of the board changes from time to time to kind of switch things up and get different views, so we don't have maybe too many people in criminal justice, too many community members. It balances it out, the type of people that come onto our board.
Per the Victims' Rights Act, the victims have the right to be heard, present, and informed. So I've touched on this a little bit in the past. This is where I would work with them to coordinate their statement, speak to the board. A little bit to piggyback what you were mentioning earlier, I find my role is a whole lot about educating. So I'm educating victims, especially the ones that are the DOC victims, explaining that, yes, I know you don't want them to come out of prison, but they are going to come out eventually. Wouldn't you rather them come through our facility instead of just being homeless in your area? So that's what I find usually is the most helpful part about the advisory board with my victims' roles.
Mario Munoz, evaluations. So now we come to the post-sentencing part of that timeline there. So after an accept and reject verdict is obtained, our team formulates a letter to the courts, which we call our evaluations report, summarizing our recommendation for or against a community corrections placement. This letter is important as it addresses a client's potential risks to the community and facility, but also their strengths and how our agency could assist them in succeeding their rehabilitation journey. For transition clients, we update DOC through a third-party system of our verdict and add any stipulations for their entry into our program. So these include anger management classes, medical assistance and treatment, and so forth. We also track any lingering pending cases associated with the client and prepare their case management file for our Larimer County case managers. During this phase of our process, additional treatment needs are communicated to our inpatient program managers to aid in entering the client into their appropriate programming. So that's going to be our RDDT, our and our STIRT. Those are spelled out there for you as well for our treatment referrals. And I do want to add that we are pretty grateful that we have inpatient treatment programs in our facility as they allow us to assist individuals with severe needs. And then just briefly kind of summarizing that scale there. So level 1 to level 4A, these are clients who have low to moderate treatment program needs. Where we start to get into more severe is going to be level 4B to level 5. These are clients with moderate to high treatment needs. And the last thing I'll add with this slide here is that we determine this, and it's self-reported by the client as we meet them, in addition to assessments that we score out. So this is after conversation, after building rapport and trust with this client, understanding that we are here to help them, so they're going to give us an idea of where they're at and what kind of treatment needs they need.
Oops, sorry, I forgot my microphone. One of the ending roles that we have in the evaluations is the waitlist management and bed list management. And the one thing to know about this is priority polling goes to our local Larimer County diversion placements in the jail. So we don't hold up that system. We don't keep people in there longer. We work with the jail, and so those are really priority. Also, people who are out in the community who don't have a stable place to be, we get them into our program quickly. For the public, we do have a wait list online that you can check to see wait list times, and those are updated monthly. You can also see that we have resources for community support that includes our guidebook, contact information. We also have a website for our victim services page as well, and for our unit. And here we have different resources that our victims can see.
Here's just a list of some of the critical stages, and you guys can look over, I won't go through all of them, but just the main ones that I will notify victims on are when they arrive, if the offender escapes, if they're petitioning to terminate early, things like that, major critical stages that would be important for a victim to know if they're going back out into the community, things like that.
Good. You guys, you can slow down, it's okay. God. Well, maybe if we have time, then we can have a bit of dialogue and some questions. But it's okay, slow down. I think we're getting there.
So in 2023, our evaluations team screened 950 cases. The acceptance rate was 57%. It is important to note that 71% of the cases we screened met that criteria for the full board advisory board review. So those cases are serious in nature, and 71% of those cases met criteria. In 2018, only 55% met criteria. So we are seeing a high increase in the complexity of these cases, high mental health, serious substance use. And in those cases, we calculated out that per person, it typically is about 8 hours from start to finish that we work with someone. But for these more complex cases, that increases even more because we're gathering mental health records. We are referring to enhanced treatment. And so our evaluation teams spends a considerable amount of time on the people that are coming through.
And the one thing that I would say is that because we've seen an increase in the level of risk coming into our programs, I think that's a direct correlation to the trust of the judicial bench, looking at community corrections as an option instead of going to the Department of Corrections. I think in years past, they would just go directly to the Department of Corrections, and now they see the benefit of having local. And so they're sending us a lot more high-risk potential individuals to come back into our program.
In this slide, you will see our acceptance rates for 2023. And you can see that out of the 580 diversion cases, we accepted 403. That has us sitting at 69% of an acceptance rate for our clients who are directly sentenced to us. Our transition acceptance rate sits at 30%. And then parole, probation, the federal pretrial, that is going to be at 66% for 2023. And we typically do sit around 70%. I will say that our transition success rate is I want to say 85%. So of those transitions we do take, 85% successfully complete. And we are one of a few programs that does accept violent offenders because we know that we need to successfully transition them back into our community safely. In this graph here, these are entry level of supervision assessments. So this graph is showing that 60% of entries into our program fell in that high range. So high-risk clients, 60% came into our program with a high LSI level. 33% fell in that medium range, while 7% fell in that low range. We believe that those are going to be our clients who have felony DUIs. It might not be a violent offense. They have more stability factors, but majority of our clients fall in that high-risk category. You can then see our completion rates. So of that 60%, we do have that 84% success rate in our transition screens and 59% in our diversion screens. So while we're seeing these total level of supervision inventory totals rise, we are still consistently successfully completing clients, which is a huge deal.
Here's some statistics and highlights of the victim service role here. As Emily noted, it's really important that we may be the only community corrections in the state that does have the victims service team. So we served 610 victims in 2023 through the community corrections portion. And here's just some other listed things that I mentioned earlier of different roles that we play, coordinating with other entities and providing different services to victims while they're in our facility as well. And the next slide is my partner statistics. So in 2023, Jean was able to assess a ton of cases, really, but she made notifications on 387, and then she did break it up among their specialty departments. So you can just kind of see she puts in a lot of work of diving in and seeing if the cases are VRAs. She works with a lot of misdemeanor cases, so she has quick turnarounds, so she does a lot of notifications as well. Oh, yes, I'm sorry, at Alternative Sentencing Department. So it's like the work release, work enders, all of that.
So secondary trauma, and this is directly related to our first responder portion there. So our team researches severe cases that includes sex offenses, assaults with injury, domestic violence. So we're reading it, we're having these conversations with these folks, and we're getting into the deep corners of not only their minds, but it kind of trickles into ours. And what I will say is with my short time on this team, I can safely say that I'll admit that it is a daily struggle to bring that secondary trauma back home. And I know we're short on time, but I did want to give props to the team here. The folks have been doing it longer than I have and keeping it professional, and they're well adjusted. I think that's a testament to their character. But with that being said, I think I can speak for the team and say that doing our work with the knowledge that we have support, if it does become too much, that is invaluable. And I think that is a direct result of the first responder trauma counselors, which I do believe has enriched our agency's culture. And to Emily's point, I do want to thank you all personally for funding that, and I hope it does continue in the future. Thank you.
All right, so to wrap up in 2024, what we're hoping to accomplish is conducting more of these Zoom interviews with our clients who are in the Department of Corrections, because it has been extremely beneficial in collecting that missing information. We have thoughts about starting an orientation group for our clients who are entering, so maybe like more of a peer-led group now. Once you're settled, what's going on, how's everything going, what questions can we answer? Recently, a group of us were trained in restorative justice circle groups, so we would love to incorporate something like that into with our staff, with our clients. It was pretty life-changing experience to go through. And then,
Can you speak about lived experience in that picture that's part of the
Yeah.
group that you're getting trained with?
yeah, so we're missing some people out of this group. It was a 3-day-long training on restorative justice, and we actually had 3 clients who participated in this group and gave us 4 clients. They participated so well, and just their feedback and perspective was so amazing. Not typically something that we do in corrections, and we were able to come up with multiple things that we wanted to bring to community corrections to help people become successful. So that was incredible. Some of these, 2 of the guys in the picture had just been released from DOC after pretty lengthy sentences, and they were just really excited to be involved and help others. So that has been a very awesome experience. Larimer County Alternatives. Sorry. Community Justice Alternatives. We have a requirement to cross-train, so our other sections can see what other sections do. And so a lot of people are interested in the evaluations unit. So we're excited to bring people over to the jail for interviews, sit in on screening, watch our advisory board. It's been very popular, so we'll be doing a lot of that this year. Tours, it's really important because we work with so many different agencies that we go and meet with various collateral agencies, take tours of their facilities, meetings with Department of Corrections. So that's something we try to do every year to understand other programs. And then our client spotlights. This last month, we started our first client spotlight. So at our advisory board, each month, we're going to be bringing a case study to the board to kind of just give an overview of how they've done in the program, ups and downs, and just spotlighting on these people and how community corrections has made a difference in their life. And with that, we are done.
Thank you, team. Well done. Very grateful. We have 3 minutes. With that in mind, Commissioner Shadek McNally.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, let me just say, so wonderful to have you all here. Thank you all for your work, and I really appreciate the opportunity to learn a little more, and just grateful that you're taking care of each other again and taking care of our community. My question is, when you talk about sharing and cross-training and stuff, do we have any outside groups like state legislators, federal legislators coming to come view and learn and understand what this takes and why this is important? Just curious.
We do, and we have Director Tim Hand here, who is exceptional with that. So he's been on many boards for community corrections across the state. He's very in tune with the legislature and the legislative session, and he's oftentimes had legislatures come and tour, and is always welcoming that. So our doors are always open, and that's because Tim is really open to bringing them in. Did I get that right, Tim?
Thank you.
Just thank you all. You know I support your work. I'm on the Community Corrections Board. I'm very impressed by what you do, and I'm really grateful for the work you do. So I want to just say that this board is very supportive of trauma counselors and peer support. You know, we want to make sure that you can do your job the best you can do, and you can't do that if you're struggling with some of the things that you've seen and experienced. So, you know, that is a very small price to pay for the help that provides to the people that work there, and that's our way of showing, you know, how much we appreciate you beyond your, you know, paying you. But I mean, you know, we do understand that the work you do is difficult, and we also know it's crucial for our community's safety and well-being. So just thank you very much.
So I will wrap it up. Extend the gratitude, also acknowledging Tim and Alexis in the back there. Yeah, well done. Be good to. I had a bunch of questions, but I'll let them go. One thing constructive feedback is we might in the future try to look at the cadence, look at you know, being very intentional about leaving 10 or 15 minutes at the end so we can have more of a dialogue.
And I apologize, we usually have
You don't need
2-hour
to
work
apologize.
sessions, and we changed it to 90, because I thought we were taking up too much of your time, so I apologize on that part.
Well, I think we can all adapt, and because I think dialogue is really important. But you're all doing outstanding work, and we're very grateful. And that's basically it. It's 3 o'clock, by the way. We're done on time. We are adjourned.